Hey guys, G here from the Way Within podcast. We took a little break. We're ready for season number 2. And today our first episode is going to be with an amazing guest. His name is Professor Spira. He is an advocate of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. This is his book here. The Mucusless Diet Healing System is something that was created by a guy named Professor Arnold Ehret, who was really big on fasting for physical, mental, spiritual rejuvenation. And his diet was also called the Mucusless Diet, which basically categorized foods into either mucus forming or non-mucus forming. It's a very simplified version. So it's basically a really simplified form of veganism. And he was seeing crazy transformation. Spira alone, when he switched to this, lost over 110 pounds, lost 7 inches on his waist. He got off pharmaceutical medications, his allergies, migraines went away. So many different transformations, not only did he see, but also in the people that helped him. Some of you might be wondering also why the break. I've been working on a lot of new projects. We've got a new brand. If you watch this online, you'll see the new logo. Working on some personal projects here in the city of Toronto. And I just need some time to sort of step back and figure out some things and how I want to move forward. And I'm so excited about all these new things I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So without further ado, I bring to you Professor Spira, the Mucusless Diet Healing System. So enjoy the podcast, and I will see you on the other side. Peace.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up.
And as you wake up, a funny thing starts to happen. You'll start to see the world in a different light. And eventually, when you're ready, you'll start to look within. Who are you? This show was created to assist you on your journey. Welcome to the Way Within. Here today with Professor Spira. He is an author and a really inspirational guy, among other things, a great musician, I hear. I haven't heard any of his music yet. And he's an author of a book called Spira Speaks. And he's also annotated a bunch of Arnold Ehret's work as well. And how did those books come together? It was a collaboration, I guess, of his work and some of your notes as well?
Yes, the annotated or Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System, annotated, revised, and edited by Professor Spira, is in the tradition of the great annotated works of literature and the historical, biblical works and all that kind of stuff, where people have come and given an analysis and contemporary insights and commentary to existing important works. And so I felt like Professor Ehret's work really, if anybody deserved that kind of treatment, then his work could use a good annotated version.
And I agree 100%. And I love the way you phrase that. So Professor Spira has an amazing story he's going to share with us today about his life journey, how he found out about Arnold Ehret's, Professor Ehret's work, and then he's going to tell you about what that entails. What is the Mucusless Diet? So welcome to the show. And please tell us a bit about yourself and a little bit of your backstory.
So I grew up in a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I was always overweight, and I also suffered from a lot of ailments. In my family, a lot of my family members took medications. My mother was really ill, and she was in and out of the hospital. There was one year she actually had the ambulance called for, I think, 200 times that year.
Wow.
Every day she had went into the hospital, and this was like documented. My aunt had documented all this. So growing up, I was in those environments a lot. I was in hospitals just visiting my mom, and so seeing her like that, I thought that being sick was that was normal. Like that, being in that kind of, taking pills every day. I started taking something called Celdane for my so-called allergies when I was 7 years old, and then they took that off the market because it was killing people or something, and I started taking Allegra D and Zyrtec and Claritin, and I went through the whole thing. I was like an experiment for the doctors. They just say, well, if it wasn't perfect, it's like, well, we'll try this. It's like, well, how do you feel? Well, it feel better. I do get nosebleeds every day, The Allegra D was good for nosebleeds and Nasonex and all that. So I grew up in that mode. And as I played football and I worked out a lot, so in high school, I kind of had a little control. I don't know if you say control of my weight, but it was just within the framework of the way people look at body types and stuff. I was just this big football player, so that was acceptable for me to kind of be like that. When I went to college, I went to study music in College Conservatory of Music, and I wasn't working out as much. I was practicing like almost 18 hours a day, it seemed like, on my trombone. And so I was starting to develop the double chin, and it was just getting it was getting bad. And I'd kind of given up, because before that I had tried all kinds of, like I did the diet pill, and I tried different diets, and at that time, that's when the Atkins diet got real. I never tried that, because even then that sounded idiotic to me, but that was real popular at the time. And so I just kind of was like, I'm gonna just eat what I eat, and just and that's gonna be that. And I met a guy by the name of Willie Smart, aka Brother Air, who had practiced the Mucusless diet at that time for over 20 years. And he basically just laid the book on us, or told us about the book, me and my friend Ryan, saxophone player. And we, at first I just heard him talking about it, and I knew that this was different than all this other stuff that I'd been into, that this was going to be like that special golden key, sort of almost secret, like not that's because there wasn't a lot of people that know about it. Still not a lot of people know about it in comparison to other things. But so I knew it would change my life. So I read the book, and I started the transitional process and the fasting process, and cutting out the pus and mucus forming foods out of my diet, the meat and the dairy. And I did it systematically. It wasn't cold,
So what do you mean about pus and mucus forming foods, for those people that don't know? Like, tell us a little bit about that, because that sounds disgusting, first of all. But you're meaning that foods are causing us, is creating this within us? Want to just elaborate on that a little bit more?
So there's some people kind of get this confused, because they say mucus forming, they'll think automatically about the snot and all that kind of stuff that's lymphatic related. There's two components to it. So if you think of a mucus forming food item, it's any food item that will decay down into this slimy sludge. So compare, say, a piece of bread. Most people, if they've had bread or some white bread, if you put that in water and let it sit there, it's gonna turn into some slime. It's gonna be slimy. It's not gonna it's not gonna just be just nice and you go away. It's gonna leave behind this slimy residue. Whereas if you were to do the same thing with a grape or a strawberry or an apple, it will not turn into that slime. It's going to degrade into a substance that is much easier to eliminate in terms of the body. So you can imagine, when you eat mucus forming foods, this residue, even if you're having regular bowel movements, there is a slimy residue that starts to build up. And over time, just as in with your kitchen sink or your bathtub, that pipe, your intestine starts to just get just bogged up with all this stuff. And that's when, a lot of people have problems. I don't know what the statistics are of all the numbers of people that just have just colon problems, like, are dying of colon problems and that kind of stuff. That's why that we're not built and created to be able to handle these abominable foods, stuff that we're calling food that has nothing to do with food. Now, pus forming specifically is talking about meat and dairy products, animal products, because the pus, that old dead and decaying tissue and flesh and blood basically pussifies, if I can create a word here on the spot. And then on top of that, you cook it, and it's basically pure pus. It's like taking, it's just taking a piece of tissue as flesh, and it's just this decaying. As soon as the animal dies, it's decaying. And so we're feeding ourselves with this decaying flesh that is it's worse than just straight mucus forming foods, because it's very concentrated. That the kind of mucus and the kind of stuff is very concentrated. And all of these things, when it just sits in your gut or in your intestines, eventually it starts to become more and more acidic. And that's where you hear a lot of people talking about acids and alkaline and all this kind of stuff. All pus and mucus forming foods, if they stay in your body too long and they're not able to eliminate, become acid forming foods and will create that acidosis all throughout your body, stop your lymphatic system up, and so on and so forth. And then you just have the encumbered, constipated humans that we love today. Yeah.
So that's where you were at. So back to your story. So you started eliminating these things out of your diet. So at your worst or lowest point before you had this, what were you at? What were you feeling like? So for other people who might be there right now listening, tell us what that was like, and continue your story from that point when you started eliminating them. Like,
when it came to health, it was definitely a hopeless kind of feeling, but I tend to be a positive person, so even I basically just accepted it. Whereas some people would they would just be depressed and kind of defeated. I was like, you know what? I'm a musician. I'm gonna just play music until I die, and I might be this big old chunk sitting there playing an instrument, but I'm gonna just make my music, and that's gonna be that. But at the same time, I did have a moment. I was in the practice room practicing, and it was after I had read the Mucusless Diet book, and I'd already sort of dabbled a little bit and tried to start the process of changing my diet. And I looked in this mirror that was there, and it was all broken. It looked like someone had hit it with their fist or something. And at that moment, I just had a change. I just saw something, and I looked at myself, and I was just like, "Nah, I'm gonna make something happen." And then after that, I just really got really serious. The social dynamic, I handled that in a way that I don't necessarily recommend other people handle it like that, but understand that you have to handle it in some way, whatever is fitting for your own personality. I was pretty hardcore with it, at least some people say, because especially back then in 2002, all of this acceptance for plant-based diets and all this stuff that's happened over the past 5, 6, 7 years was not around then. And so you really you were not being shown any love for trying to heal yourself, even though you're losing weight. And you think people would reach out to you and kind of pat you on the back and be like, good for you. Yeah, it wasn't like that for me. In the beginning, it was very people looking at me real scared, and people looking at me with that look, or haters that are, you can't do it. That's it's a mess,
What do you mean you don't want pizza? We're all having pizza and beer, man. What do you mean you don't want pizza? What happened to you? Right?
Exactly. Yes, yeah. I'm like, I'm looking 10 times better, and I'm feeling better, and that's exactly what they'll say. Like, well, what happened to you? Yeah. And because it's definitely a situation where the crabs in the basket, and everybody's wants you to suffer with them. Don't leave. And food is such a social experience and phenomenon in terms of just the culture and connecting you to people, and even the just everything seems to revolve around food. So when you take that out, because I stopped going to restaurants. Now, not everybody that practices a Mucusless diet totally scraps restaurants, and there wasn't no vegan restaurants back then around. So these days you can do, but that's another trap. That there's a whole other topic, is like the vegan trap. You don't want to get trapped in a lot of the soy products and the processed fake cheeses and all that kind of stuff too long.
The
grains, yeah, all that kind of stuff. And so, but I would rather see somebody eating that kind of stuff than the straight pus form.
So did you have to get all new friends? Because a lot of people that ask me, like I just went through a 54-day fast, and I really saw that, not eating at all. You see the social context, you feel it, you feel emotionally like, wow, I don't know what's more important, my social life or my health. You feel it on a different level. So did you have to give up a lot of your friends? Did you have to make new friends? What was that like?
I was open to it, and that's what I'm talking about, where I was a little more hardcore than a lot of people. So for me, for the people that weren't on board, or if there was going to be any kind of negative energy, that was out. They was going to be out my life.
See you later.
Really even giving any kind of emotional thought or anything like that. It was just like, that's how it's going to be. And the one thing I had going for me as a musician and artist, kind of given within some circles, you're kind of given that latitude to just be kind of different and just like, oh, that's an artist. Like, you're like, okay, that's. And, but yeah, I really didn't hang. I was either with musicians, and at the college I went to, you don't really have any free time to yourself. I mean, you pretty much, it's a total immersive experience in music. And that's what, I forget what the percentage was, but the majority, it's almost more than half of the people that show up freshman year quit the program. I mean, it's one of the most rigorous academic music programs in the country. And so you really don't have a whole lot of time to be hanging out and that kind of stuff. And what I did most of the time, if I was going to do something social, it revolved around me playing music somewhere. So
you kept yourself occupied, more or less, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
With what I'm passionate about. That's one thing that I tell people that's real important for them to do, is find something that you're passionate about. That's not food, that's not the diet and all that, because that has to be there as your foundation. But you got to get into your stuff.
Yeah, I think that's key, finding that, because there are a lot of amazing things to live for, other than the things you think that are just consuming your time, like your job and the things you eat. I realized also how much time we spend thinking about food, preparing food, going for lunch, breaking up your day. And then when you're eating all the cooked and heavy foods, it drains all your energy, and then you can't function. So all these changes, they make a big difference. So tell me a little bit more about, so you cut this out. What did you see health change in you? How much weight did you lose? Did all your issues go away? Like, what was life after this transition as you went through it? What were the changes and what changed? Yeah.
So the first 3 months were really, the first 6 months were just really intense, but I was very driven, and I started to feel better. I started kind of losing weight, but I also would go through, I don't call it sickness. We call it elimination, because you're going through an elimination. If you're not putting in the stuff that is creating this entire experience, then you're eliminating it. And so instead of saying, well, I'm sick, it was like, no, you're going through an elimination. So I went through eliminations. We're not scared of cold and flu-like symptoms. I mean, we will embrace it. Say, okay, this is an opportunity for my body to heat itself up, throw off and release all of this waste. You're going to see, I saw all kinds of strings of mucus and parasites and worms and stuff coming out. About 2 months in, I started doing lemon juice enemas. Now, in the original Mucusless Diet book, Ehret recommends water enemas. So if you want to be a traditionalist, that's fine. One of the things that Brother Air and some of the other people that I was around that practiced Mucusless Diet, they had adopted lemon juice enemas, and I started to experiment with that, and that totally changed. That changed.
Huge fan. Yeah, after reading your book, I changed that up too, and wow, like you feel it, like where you can hold warm water, like no problem. That first even 100 mils, that first like few ounces, you feel something different, and you eliminate it in a different way too. So yeah, big fan also of the Lemonas.
Yeah, and so that really changed the game. I mean, it was hard for me. It took me about 6 months really to totally get off of meat, which is longer than a lot of people that I work with. But I wanted to transition in such a way where I made permanent changes, where I wasn't going to be yo-yoing and doing this, and I wasn't going to feel guilty if I did eat something that was for transitional purposes, because there's some non-vegan items that Ehret recommends if you need them for the transition. And so I used some of those items, and I didn't have no guilt about it. And I would go kind of long periods of time, like several weeks without meat. And then I would kind of have meat. A lot of it was mental. It wasn't even physical. It was just like undoing this mental addiction to something that I don't really need, and letting go of the belief that you need it. And just so there's more than just, okay, I'm changing my diet. Being open for the psychological change and the emotional change and the spiritual change, and it's all starts to really happen, and you get this momentum going. So by 6 months in, I lost about 110 pounds, and I got off the CPAP unit. I had been given a CPAP unit because I snored so bad due to what they called sleep apnea. And I was, 18 years old with this oxygen mask at night to sleep.
That's normal, right?
Right, and then everybody do that. It's
normal, right? Yeah.
And so that was one of the first things that, I got rid of that. I'd stopped taking the pharmaceutical medications on my own. I just was like, I'm done. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. I'm not taking this no more. And so I was, by that spring, because I kind of started in the fall. So by that spring, I was, I started getting it real heavy sunbathing. I was doing that spring. I did a lot of sunbathing. I was learning how to fast. I was just everything was happening on that path. And, I'd show up to school, and I'm walking around the hallways with like heads of lettuce and celery, and people looking at me like I'm totally crazy. And then I look back like, well, you're the one that's got this bag of chips. Like, look at the ingredients that's in that bag. It's all kinds of stuff that you can't pronounce. I can name this. This is a piece of celery. This is lettuce. And so, yeah. So it was just liberation. My music and artistry totally improved. I mean, just my clarity, my ability to analyze and think through things. A lot of me going into higher levels of academia later. I went into master's, and I just finished my PhD last year. That I attribute that to the diet, because it freed me up mentally to be able to just understand things and analyze things. And
I think the saddest thing, or the worst thing, about it is that most people are in this prison and they don't even know it. They think that's normal. They think that way, or they can't comprehend things a certain way, and that's just the way they are. But there could be multiple layers of higher understanding, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, brain function, by simply changing the diet. And I experienced that too. I always did well in school, but these really last 2 months where I was really fasting and not eating anything, like, it was like leaps and bounds compared to anything I had ever experienced. The clarity, just the intuition. So not only analyzing a problem, but also the ability to sort of know which way to go, what I should be doing. Like, people around me, can I trust them? Like, do I get a good vibe off them? Like, all these sort of senses started arising or increasing in sensitivity as well. And I was like, wow, what was making me feel like that? And maybe it was the grains, because I was eating a lot of grains as a vegetarian. Most vegetarians, they'll switch the meat out for eggs, grains, pastas, rices. And I when I really looked at it, I was still eating just a very little bit of cooked veggies, and even smaller amount of raw veggies. And then fruits, once in a while. But looking now at reading the Mucusless Diet, I was like, I'm still doing so much wrong. And I thought, here I am, healthy vegetarian, right? I got to figure it out, right? But no, the universe comes and says, hey, here, read this book here, Mucusless Diet. So there's something here for you. So then you decided to dedicate your life to this diet, more or less, like being a practitioner. Tell me how that's been for you and helping others.
It's been interesting because if you'd have asked me 20 years ago or told me that I was going to be talking about diet and helping people change their diet and lifestyle, everybody in the room would have laughed. You wouldn't even have to know me and everybody would start laughing. The way it happened, I just started answering questions because people, with me losing all that weight at first, that would kind of pique people's curiosity. And I had an ability to kind of analyze someone's situation and then kind of give them recommendations like, well, would you think about it like this? Or, well, try this. Or, well, this is what happened to me. And this is what, because another thing I did was I studied everybody I could at the time that I knew had either practiced the diet or had tried to do it and failed. I mean, I just studied all these case studies. And so I kind of just had all that in my head. So when I was talking to somebody, I could reference and say, okay, this happened to me. This happened to Brother Ehret. This happened to Decorah. This is what I've seen other people. I just sort of became this this person. I just filled my head with all this data about the diet. And so as people started to ask me questions, I went online, and there was one kind of obscure forum that wasn't a lot of people there. This was before the Facebook years and stuff. And I had joined in on that forum, and I noticed there was a lot of people that was in there that really didn't practice the Mucusless diet. You had some raw foodists that sort of would give an homage to Ehret, but they were mentally they were on to something else. And so that's when I was kind of like, man, I need to create a place where Mucusless diet practitioners can find each other and talk and get together. And so that became the Facebook forum later on. And it's been a trip just watching everything grow, because I didn't think I would be doing a lot of what I'm doing now, like publishing the books and consultations and helping people and speaking about the diet. There was a point where I knew I would eventually do it, but I thought I would do it later in life, like when I was in my 70s or something, because I would be a professional touring musician and go and do the musician life, and then come back and promote the diet. Because at that time, I mean, things were so close-minded. Just 10 years ago, I thought that it would at least take 30 or 40 years to get it really to where it is now. I mean, in terms of just open-mindedness and people searching and being open to hear this information. And so, but I got the message one time. I was fasting. I was doing, it was a month or so into fasting and fruit diet period. And I was doing some just meditating, and it just came to me. I was like, you need to do this now. You need to put together this book. Because I have documents even back to 2005, 2004, where I started to kind of mess around with annotations, and I had, notes and all this stuff that I had taken at the time in the book. And I was even going to go through sentence by sentence and do like with the Bible, where it's like verses, every verse is numbered. I did that to the first chapter, like 2005. I have that document somewhere. Then I was just like, okay, it's probably not necessary. But so I just went ahead and did it. It felt like it was time, and we just been building ever since.
And so what is some of the most dramatic cases you've helped people with? Like the transformation? Is it mainly weight loss? Is it emotional? Is it like any of the big like diseases, that are out there? Like, what have you seen as far as like what's possible with Mucusless diet?
I mean, I've just personally helped a lot of people, all those different, I get case studies of each one of those things that you mentioned. And then there's a lot of people where they'll tell me that they just read the book or they saw my videos and they sort of took it upon themselves and they made drastic transformations. But I've had people, I don't like to use the disease words that the medical establishment uses. I let them use those words. They're kind of like cuss words to me. So I say, the C word. But I've worked with people that have had C word or have been told that they have that, and been told that they have a lot of different things. And I take that information into consideration. But with the Mucusless Diet Healing System, you free yourself up if you can let go of some of these limiting belief systems, and you're looking at symptoms and say, well, what symptom do you have? Because even the naturopathic world is just as bad these days. Everybody wants to diagnose people with this all these words that don't like, oh, you're leaky gut and this and then they want to sell you something like, well, here, take this. It's the same consciousness. It's the same. Take a pill. Take whether it's this might be it's an herbal pill instead of some kind of other type of chemistry. But the consciousness, to me, we got to change that consciousness. And so that's what I try to help people do, is let go of that consciousness. But it's very, and we're focused on the lifestyle. It really is about permanently changing your life. I don't treat nothing. I don't treat diseases. I show people, here are the principles of transformation, of physiological transformation through this diet, through this dietary path. I'm not saying it's the only path. I'm just saying I've seen it work for me and a lot of other people, and that some dramatic changes can definitely happen.
So you're saying anything is possible, even the worst of the worst case, if they set the intention and really dive into this mucusless diet's healing system, anything is possible.
You have to believe that. Because it's really about, you have to do the work. Nobody can do the work for you. You can give you some advice, and based on your symptoms, say, okay, you probably don't want to do this, but maybe do this, and really work. But you are a pioneer, no matter how you slice it. When you decide to take your health into your own hands and go down this natural healing path, you become a pioneer, because in this day and age, you are going so much, even if you surround yourself with where it doesn't even feel like you're necessarily that odd or that revolutionary, you are in comparison to people around the rest of the world. And so the people that go down this path tend to be folks that are a little bit more, just I'd say, brave, and just like, and then some people, and I work with a number of people that have been forced to really give this a shot because they don't have anything else. When Arnold Ehret discovered some of the principles of fasting on himself, he did so when he was at the end of his rope. He was, deathly ill, and he's okay, I'm just going to stop eating. And he ended up starting to heal as a result of stopping eating.
Okay, so that brings up my next question. How much does fasting play a role in the healing system? Is it just the food, or like how much fasting are we talking about here?
So Ehret's methods of fasting, as his version of the book, is called rational fasting. So he makes the argument or the thing that say, look, there's a lot of people that try to go too long or try to push themselves. Some people, it works for them, but his recommendation is start off slow and master the short-term fasting periods. And so 2 to 3 day, or he might even say, well, start off with a 24-hour fast, or maybe start off with a 2 to 3 day fast.
So he's talking water fast, juice fast, dry fast. What kind of fast are we talking, 2 to 3 days?
In his book, he mainly is really talking about juice fasting, which surprises some people. Some people think he's talking about water fasting. And this is one of these things where when he talks about the fasting that he did, where he did the 40-day fast, he did water fasting. To know that you would have to look at some other documentation or some other things that aren't translated into English that he wrote about some of that stuff, those kind of details. But when he's recommending, he has a section in the Mucusless Diet Healing System that's called fasting drinks. And one of the drinks is either like honey, lemon. I know like hardcore vegans, that'll be out, but he recommends honey, water, and lemons. So that's like the Ehret lemonade, or you can use, he recommends brown sugar, or you can, use some other kind of sweetener. You could also just juice about 4 or 5 apples and a couple lemons, and that's a great lemonade. But you can do a lemonade, you can do fruit juice, and so those are the 2 main things that he recommends. Then he said if you're doing a longer fast and you want to stay in that liquid space, then you could do vegetable broth, where you would boil some vegetable scraps. This is actually something good to do if you juice a lot of vegetables and you want to find something to do with your pulp. If you boil it in a bunch of water, you can freeze it now if you want to, and then boil it later in some water and come up with this vegetable broth. So that's an option. So he basically gives you different options, and then like I said, kind of gives you that, okay, do 2 to 3 days and go with it. Now, in my conception, what that basically does is, as you do the short-term periods and you really learn how to control, where you want to transition in and out of the fasting and break the fast properly, that kind of information is a book. Very important. I mean, a fast is really only as effective as how well you break it, in my opinion. And so you learn how to master this process, and then sooner or later your body is going to go through an elimination, or what some people would call a healing crisis, where you get the cold and the flu-like symptoms and all that kind of stuff. What's nice about this path is once you go through some of those things early on, you don't go through that. Like where maybe you used to get sick a couple times a year. Now you go whole years and you never, don't get sick at all. But it all depends on how you're practicing and what you're doing. But in the beginning, and from time to time, you will go through these eliminations. And like I said, I look at it as a good thing. But when you do hit a period where you end up going through elimination, then if you already have your fasting skills together, then you can immediately jump into fast. And that's when, for me, that's when the longer fast start to really come to fruition, because your body is telling you to keep going. Because and it's funny, because I've worked with different people, and they'll be gung ho to fast when they're feeling good, and then as soon as they start going through elimination, they kind of get a little bit like, wait a minute. And I'm like, now this is what you've been preparing for. This is when
it's the whole point, right?
This is the whole point. Yeah, this is when things get real. And so so your body might tell you to, at that point, maybe that's how you fast a couple weeks or a month. Your body starts telling you to really stay in there.
Okay, so one quick question: what are some of the most important things to break a fast? Like, what would you say are some just like really important tips? A couple quick ones.
So it depends on your physiology, and if you're just starting out, and say you ate just a standard American diet or a standard Canadian diet or whatever, you probably want to break your first fast with vegetables. And Ehret's got a couple different combinations in there, but this is the raw salads. You don't want to eat mucus forming items, so you want it to be mucus free as much as possible. So you could choose a salad, something like that, and you want it to go through your system as quickly as possible. And you don't want, because you got these toxic waste during the fasting process started to come to the surface, and so you want something that's going to act as a broom to kind of go through you. Now, if you're a little bit cleaner, then you want to break your fast with fruit. And after, I would say, a year, after a while, you always would want to break your fast with fruit. I never break my fast with vegetables anymore, but and so those are the 2 main ways. But the key principle is keep it totally mucus free. So that's not a time to experiment with what Ehret calls the mucus lean items, which are just mucus forming, but they're cool for transitional purposes. But that's not the time to be messing with those when you're breaking the fast. You want to do the fruit or the vegetables. If you're craving foods, like you're craving mucus forming foods and stuff, then you might want to break it with vegetables, because that's going to neutralize some of that toxic waste a little better, and hopefully give you your control back, because you don't want to lose control. That's the main thing. You don't want to fast too long to where you're losing control when you come off of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Another quick question, just backtracking a bit. We talked about some things that you've seen. Have you seen anyone able to grow their hair back? Like, I know Ehret talks a bit about that in one of his books about growing back, hair and almost like getting younger type thing and more vitality. Is it possible? Yeah. Have you seen anyone grow hair back? Or
I mean, I haven't seen someone that was like totally bald, kind of grow it all back.
So
that doesn't mean it's that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's we have I called it inherited weaknesses. I think the mainstream term is genetic weaknesses or issues. So they're still connected to constipation, and Ehret says that all diseases, the foundation of all disease is constipation. Talking about cellular constipation, not just the bowels. And so over time, generation after generation after generation, these traits that are passed on are based on various forms of constipation. And so where I might have a particular weakness, and maybe you can't see my weakness or something, but where somebody else might have a hair issue or some other issue, a skin issue. Everybody has their issue. And some I've seen are easier to handle than others. Skin issues seem like, they're almost some of the easiest stuff to handle with the Mucusless diet, because most of people that are having some of these skin allergies and stuff, if they're eating mucus forming foods, all they got to do is stop eating the mucus forming foods and their skin starts clearing up, and that kind of thing. Now the hair changes. My hair changed when I started the diet quite a bit, where it got really, really soft, and just all over my body. The hair that I had just got real soft, almost like baby hair or something. The hair of it was. So that was an interesting observation. Now I notice over the past couple years, it's getting a little bit firmer, but it's not as soft as it was back then. But there did feel like a period of rebirth where I was almost, if you compare my before and after picture, it's like, some people think I look I looked older when I was 18 than I look now, even now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to send me those pictures so I can.
Yeah. I'll do that.
Awesome. So, one more question. And we're going to have you back for sure. We're going to talk. We got lots to talk about. But so, what are some of the most common mucus-free foods that you like to cook with? Like, what does a day for you look like? How do you eat, pretty much? And what are your most favorite foods to you have in your kitchen?
Okay, so I tend to do. Ehret has a default menu, which is fruit in the afternoon and some kind of vegetable meal in the evening. Now that you got to read the book, because it's not that simple in terms of the transitional kinds of things. And that's what kind of makes this sometimes hard to explain, because it's a systematic transitional process. And so I might have plateau points where I eat a certain way for a period of time, but part of the transition is to change where if you've been eating with fruits in the afternoon and salad in the evening, for a while, you might want to change that up every once in a while and put vegetables in the afternoon and fruit in the evening, and that's part of the transition. But for me, I tend to have fruit in the afternoon and have a vegetable meal in the evening if I'm eating, if I'm not fasting, if I'm in the eating kind of mode.
You fast how often right now on average you fast?
It hasn't been super consistent. Like, I fasted a lot at the turn of the year. I fasted several weeks. I think 2 weeks in January.
Do you do like a weekly, like 1 day a week you're doing a fast, anything like that? Or is it more like once in a while you do a longer fast?
I've kind of done all those different variations over the years. So there's been times where I would fast 1 or 2 days a week, and I kind of had that kind of thing going.
So go with your intuition, right? So just when you feel it, just go for it. If you feel a day, go for it.
Yeah, and sometimes if it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going to start a creative project, my body kind of naturally goes into a fasting mode. And so it has been turning into more of a thing that I do for longer fast, a little less often, I guess, over the past couple years. And then I usually will, a couple times a year, I hit pretty long fast. But I've went in the past. I went, I mean, and I know you just did the long fast. I mean, I went 3 years in a row. I did a 6-month long juice fast, like year after year.
Wow.
And those were like these intensity days when I was, and that's when I really learned. I mean, a lot of the stuff that because you learn so much when you're going through that.
So that's. We'll go there next, just really quick. So on the longer fast, or in general, how did your spirituality change compared to how you were before? Any changes? Like, were you always a spiritual guy, or did something evolve as you change your diet, as far as like, spirituality, stuff like that?
It evolved tremendously. I was a seeker and somebody that just ask the questions that you're not supposed to ask, the philosophical kind of questions. And I was interested in philosophers and what they had to say. But then I kind of studied everybody that I came across that I thought had interesting ideas across the board. And so sometimes it was theologians, and other times maybe it was some new age kind of philosophers, and other times it would be, so I kind of just was open to all of these different areas. And I started to get into various forms of meditation. Before I started the diet, I had actually had gotten into Kriya Yoga. I had studied Autobiography of a Yogi, a Yogananda, and
that book has been coming up this week like 100 times. I'm with the guy today who's a Kriya Master's teaching. I have that audible book in my car right now. He was telling me about it. You're talking about it. I was reading in Tools of the Titans. Like right now, that book is like everywhere in my face. So it's like the universe is screaming at me right now. It's like keep
check
reading,
it out,
keep doing it. So it's in my car. I'm listening to it. But So that
and that got me. I mean, and that was in high school. I mean, I was like my senior year of high school. It was junior and senior year. I was kind of leading a double life because on one hand, I was doing the football player. I mean, I wasn't a football star, but I was a varsity player, and so you get treated a certain way when you have that kind of like that status in high school thing. So I was one way in that social sphere because I knew how you were supposed to act. And at that time I wanted to be popular and all that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of this persona I created within this high school sphere. But then I was going home doing all this other stuff where, studying, going online, because I just hit I was right when online was starting. Everybody was starting to get it at their home. And I was going online and looking at all these different websites. At that time, it was like something called Spirit Web, and all this stuff had all these new age kind of philosophical stuff. That's back when I did the mirror meditation, where you go and you like look at your third eye in the mirror with a candle, and you start to see your face morphing into these different stuff. So I kind of went through all those kind of different periods, but once I got into the fasting, that pretty much opened the door. And once the door is open wide enough, then it's open. And you don't have to constantly be, because a lot of people, they want me to make a lot of spiritual videos where I talk about all the philosophies and that kind of stuff. One reason that I avoid that is I don't need validation. A lot of the people that talk about their spiritual beliefs, it's like they want validation. They want people to agree with them, or they're trying to whatever. I could care less. I would rather people not believe what I believe,
And to that point too, it's people got to find their own spirituality, like If you're telling them, that's what the church is telling them. Believe me, it's like no, go experience it for yourself. You'll. It's the only way to really understand it, right? Is to have your own experience.
That's exactly it, and I'm firm believer in that. But yeah, I mean, it's indescribable. I mean, on some of those places that I went mentally and
Really cool.
spiritually, just and then the music, because for me it combined with the music, and so when I'm playing music, it's a meditation, and so I was able to just go, and not only that, but then I was around Brother Air and other people in the community at the time that were also doing these long fasts. So we had musicians on the bandstand where everybody on stage almost is fasting and then doing long fast. And so the energy of that, and that was the vision for our band was a vegetarian band, and most of the people practice Mucusless Diet Healing system. And that we didn't plan that, but that kind of emerged as like, wow, we just realized that we had a band that had all these elements. And so it became about the lifestyle, and it became about music inspired by this lifestyle and because you can't have a culture without art and without myth. You don't have without myth and without art. And the storytellers you don't have. And so we were trying to creating a new nation of people, a new culture. We had to say, okay, well, first we got to create the art. We got to create that basis. That's a missing component that I'd noticed for a long time in some of the some of the raw food circles and the fruitarian circles and this kind of thing. It was like I didn't see any sophistication when it came to art, and no one was talking about it. Everybody was talking about how many miles they ran that day and that kind of stuff. And like when I'm thinking, I'm like, well, I played my trombone for 12 hours straight. So I mean, that's my running around the block,
Yeah, music's a whole nother level. Like either you get it or you don't. Like when you're playing music, it's something special. It's almost spiritual in itself. The vibe, the connection when you're playing in a band. Like, fortunately enough, I played in a band for a little bit. So there's those moments of inspiration where everyone's just on the same page and everything just clicks. And it's just like, you're in a different world altogether. And there's some sort of collective consciousness going on where you just all tap in. But I think that's a whole nother podcast altogether. We could talk about that.
Yeah, the music. Yeah.
So just a couple last questions to close off here. If you had to say a percentage, cooked versus raw in the Mucusless, is there a percentage that you like to go by?
It really depends on where you are with your transition. I would say more raw than cooked, definitely.
Like, where are you at right now? What would you say in your own diet? You're pretty advanced. Is that would you want to get to?
So I just go through different periods where my thing is I don't like to stay in one place for too long. So I hit a plateau point and then kind of change it up. So earlier this year I had went, pretty much July, January was mostly raw. And then I started getting into some steamed vegetables and more, and so when I have that type of meal, it's probably, and I never really think in terms of like quantifying things, but if I had to, I would say probably 75% raw in the meal, and maybe, and there's a method as well where I wouldn't start eating a cooked item first. So I start off with the raw salad and I eat about 25% of that, and then start to incorporate cooked mucus-free vegetables into that. And so that helps it eliminate and keep things
awesome. Yeah, that makes sense.
Keep things cool.
So what's your favorite go-to meal then? What's your favorite? Is it like sweet potatoes and salad? What's the mucusless main event Saturday night? My go-to meal, you're probably asking about my go-to vegetable meal, because if it's just a go-to meal, that right now it's mangoes, because it's basically whatever fruit is ripe, tasty, and in season. So this past couple weeks I've
eating nothing but mangoes and oranges, and that has been my afternoon meal. And then in the evening, I just basically a salad, just my salad. There I have the different ingredients that I put in my salad, and then I might change up the vegetable. I might do collard greens one day, and then squashes are something that I like people to experiment with, because they, especially when you're in the beginning, if you cook them properly, they're basically mucus free, but they can be very satisfying.
Yeah.
And so I like a little bit of that.
How often would you say you get sick now since you've gone on mucusless?
It's weird because there's times when I want to get sick. Like I want to get cold and flu-like symptoms to just speed something along, and it doesn't happen. I would say maybe once a year I will go through maybe some cold and flu-like symptoms. Sometimes what I've tried to actually do is learn how to almost bring it on. Like what do I have to do? How aggressive do I have to be in order to trigger an elimination so that I could actually basically totally control it? Because what kind of been happening is, unless I do that, unless I be, very aggressive at a certain time, and also even the weather outside has to do with it. If I'm aggressive at the right time, then I can maybe trigger some cold and flu-like symptoms. And so I'm kind of someone, since I don't run from that, I like to experiment. And that's in the spirit of Professor Arnold Ehret. I don't recommend it to anybody or in general, but one story about Ehret, he tried to put himself around some of these real dangerous illnesses to see if he could get it and eliminate it. He never could get it, and so that's a thing, because that's one thing it never seems to be dictated by. I can be around sick people and all this kind of stuff where people contagious. I don't have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, there's a whole nother germ theory out there. That's another podcast altogether. But yeah, I agree. Awesome. Okay, so if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best way to contact you?
So go to mucusfreelife.com, and on the menu you'll see contact us, and so you can go there, send me a message there that goes to my email. Professor Spira Facebook page, and we have Professor Arnold Ehret Mucusless Diet Healing System Facebook group, and if you want to join that, send me a message through the website, because we got a lot of people that want to join, and I have to kind of let people in slowly. But if someone contacts me, I go ahead and let them in right away.
Well, thank you so much, brother, for all this information. We'll definitely be in touch. I would love to work more closely with you and help in bringing some of these things to the people that live around where I live, and through the internet. I'm hoping we can just spread the message loud and clear and far and wide. So thanks for the work you do. It's very important at a time where the world really needs it. So we'll have you back on for sure. I can feel it already. And whenever you want, please come to Toronto, come hang out at our retreat center, and we can talk more about ideas on how we can spread this message even further.
Yep.
So thank you so much, man. All
right. Thank you. Peace.
So we're back, and what did you guys think? Professor Spira is an awesome guy. He's doing some great work. I'd highly recommend giving the Mucusless diet a try. It's not easy, so just transition slowly. He talks about almost like a 2-year or longer transition with fasting, with all of these changes, because you gotta remember, it took such a long time to sort of get our bodies to the state they're in now. So it's going to take a long time to get them back into that optimal health and wellness state. But it is possible, and it's all up to you. So, make that investment in yourself. Try something. Maybe it's not for you, but you won't know until you try. That being said, we're signing off here. Please keep in touch. www.thewaywithin.me. The new website should be out very, very soon, if it's not out already by the time of this podcast is released. And yeah, just stay in touch. www.thewaywithin.me. I said that already. g@thewaywithin.me. That's what I meant to say. It's my email address. Shoot me an email. Connect on Facebook. We now have over 800 members in our community. And the community is all about just supporting each other on our journey through life, finding ourselves, the things that work, the things that don't. It's the Way Within community on Facebook. Instagram as well. However you guys want to reach out, send me a message, say hello. I'd love to hear from you guys. Have an awesome day. Oh, before I forget, I just want to end with a moment of gratitude. So what are you grateful for today? What's that one thing that you can think of, the first thing that comes to mind that gives you gratitude? So let's try to find at least one thing every day, a moment of gratitude. So take 5-10 seconds now and just focus on what that gratitude is and just be grateful to have that in your life. I'm grateful for all of you guys listening and tuning in and connecting and inspiring me to just create more awesome content. All right, guys. See you later. Peace.